My name is Selena Mercer, and I'm 33. I'm a back-end developer, one of those people who builds the systems that keep everything else standing, even when the loud, flashy parts get all the credit. I've always liked working where the rules are clear: inputs, outputs, logic, consequences. The part I didn't expect was learning that the messiest system I'd ever maintain wouldn't be code at all. It would be the man living in my house smiling like nothing could ever collapse. His name is Aaron Caldwell. He's 29, and he calls himself a lifestyle curator. Not influencer, not content creator, not marketer. Curator. Like his entire existence is a gallery, and he's the one selecting what deserves to be seen. He curates brunches, outfits, playlists, even the angle of sunlight coming through the kitchen windows when he films. People think that kind of life is effortless, that it's all soft music and iced coffee and pretty captions. But effortless is expensive. And for the last 2 years, that expense had been quietly routed through me. We'd been together 3 years. The last 2 he lived in my house. My name on the mortgage, my name on the utilities, my name on every boring adult thing that keeps a home from turning into a pretty shell. He contributed vibes. Occasionally, he'd buy something absurdly overpriced from a boutique market and announce it like he'd brought home Iaiasashingen. I told myself it balanced out. I told myself I loved how vibrant he was, how he could walk into a room and the room would tilt toward him. I was stable ground and he was weather. It worked until the weather started calling itself a hurricane and acting like my foundation owed it gratitude. The last 6 months he'd gotten mean about the same things he benefited from. My quiet nights in were depressing. My practical decisions were limiting. Even my job, the one paying for everything, became a punchline. His friends would come over, a swirl of curated laughter and expensive scents, drinking wine I'd bought, and looking at me with that polite pity people reserve for furniture, functional, forgettable, always expected to stay in place. And then Tiana Rivers showed up. Aaron introduced her like a miracle that had finally found him again. "This is Tiana," he'd said, eyes shining. "She's a brand strategist, like the real deal." Tiana was 30 sharp, glowing with that kind of confidence that doesn't ask for space, it takes it. Linen trousers, sleek hair, the kind of smile that could be friendly or predatory, depending on what you needed to believe. Aaron said she could see his potential, that she knew how to position him. He didn't mention at first that she was his ex-girlfriend. I learned that later, the way you learn about cracks in glass, by noticing how carefully someone avoids touching a certain spot. After Tiana arrived, Aaron's spending started moving differently. Not just more, but bolder. Like he wanted the numbers to intimidate me, like it thrilled him to do things on my dime and dare me to say anything about it. I might have missed it longer if I hadn't gone looking for something completely ordinary. A bank notification. An alert I almost deleted. A charge posted to an account I rarely used. An old everything card, the one I'd opened years ago and kept for emergencies. I clicked into it out of habit, expecting some tiny autopay I'd forgotten. Instead, I saw a statement total that made my brain pause like a loading screen. $15, $300, 1 month. I didn't panic, I didn't scream, I just stared at it, the way I stare at a corrupted log file, knowing the truth is there, knowing I'll find it, knowing the system won't lie if I read it carefully enough. There it was, line by line. A $2,200 strategy weekend at the Meridian Hotel. An $850 client dinner at a place I'd never heard of. $5,000 consulting fee. $3,000 brand aesthetics. A designer boutique run that could have paid for a semester of someone's college tuition. Smaller charges too. Spa days, high-end lunches, networking bottle service. It wasn't just money, it was a pattern. A lifestyle being siphoned out of my account like it was a natural resource. The worst part wasn't even the number. It was the little details that made it personal. The Meridian weekend when I'd been at home eating leftovers and answering a late-night work ticket because a production system was glitching. The dinner when Aaron had told me he was deep in flow and didn't want to be disturbed. I printed the statement. Not because paper makes it more real, but because paper has weight. Paper is something you can hold up in front of someone who's been floating above consequences for too long. He came home around 10, smelling like champagne and expensive cologne that wasn't mine. He walked in like the house was a stage and I was part of the set. He didn't even look guilty, because guilt requires acknowledging the other person exists. "Hey," I said calm and held up the statement. "We need to talk about this bill." He glanced at it, and his lip curled, meant to be playful, but there was something ugly underneath, like contempt wearing a smile. Ugh, finance really, Selena. Finance. It's not finance, I said. It's $15,000. He shrugged like the number bored him. It's startup costs. Tiana's building my brand. You have to spend money to make money. I kept my voice even. You spent $200 at a hotel with her. Aaron's eyes flashed annoyed that I'd gotten specific. It was a strategy session, he snapped. We were mapping out content, something you wouldn't understand. It landed exactly where he wanted it to, a jab meant to make me feel small, technical, plain, like my brain was only useful when it served him. I looked at him, really looked at him, the way his confidence sat too comfortably in my living room, the way he spoke like my money was already his, the way he'd turned my stability into something he resented while still feeding off it. This is my money, I said quietly. You're spending it on your ex-girlfriend. He stopped moving. Then he laughed, cold, sharp, like he'd been waiting for me to finally say the quiet part out loud. He stepped closer, so close I could see the shine of his skincare routine, the practiced perfection of him. So what if I am, he whispered, and there was ice in it. What are you going to do about it, Selena? You're too predictable, too boring. His smile widened as if cruelty was a private joke. You'd never leave someone like me. You could never get someone like me again. I expected pain. I expected rage. What I felt instead was the fog clearing, the mirage evaporating, like a screen flickering off and revealing the empty room behind it. I gave him a small, sad smile. You're right, Aaron. His face lit up instantly, the smug victory of a person who thinks they've pressed the right button and locked you back into place. He reached out and patted my cheek like I was a compliant child. Good, he said. Now be a doll and bring me a glass of wine. Tiana has me on this new schedule and I'm exhausted. Of course, I said. I went to the kitchen. I didn't pour wine. I didn't slam cabinets. I didn't cry. I walked past the glasses like they didn't exist and went into my office, closing the door with the soft click of a decision being finalized. I sat at my desk, the statement still in my hand, and felt something settle in my chest. Quiet, solid, irreversible. The system was corrupt. So I did what I always do. When something breaks, I started building a new one. I opened my laptop and made my first call. Not to a friend, not to a therapist, to a lawyer. And behind that office door with Aaron, out in the living room, believing he'd won, I began writing the kind of plan that doesn't make noise until it's too late to stop it. It's strange how quickly people reveal themselves when they think they've broken you. The morning after our conversation, I apologized. Not because I meant it, but because I wanted to see how far Aaron would let himself go once he believed resistance was gone. I told him I'd been stressed, that I didn't really understand branding, that he was right, and I needed to be more supportive. I said the words slowly, carefully, like I was reading from a script written for someone else. He accepted the apology with the kind of satisfaction that made my stomach turn, not relief, not reconciliation, but triumph. From that moment on, he stopped pretending. He became expansive, loud, entitled in a way that felt almost experimental, like he was testing the limits of what I'd tolerate now that he thought he'd proven something. He started calling my house our space out loud on camera, even though he'd never once contributed to it. He rearranged furniture for better angles. He turned my kitchen into a permanent staging area. My living room became a revolving door of influencer friends and curated strangers who didn't bother learning my name. And I let it happen. I nodded. I smiled. I moved through my own house like a guest who didn't want to be in the way. Selena, can you pick up my dry cleaning? He'd say, already turning back to his phone. Selena, the pool filter sounds weird. Can you fix it? It's messing with the audio. Selena, can you grab ice? We're going live in 5. I always said yes, always of course, always calm. What he didn't see was how methodical I was becoming. I documented everything, quietly, relentlessly. Every catered order charged to my account. Every overnight guest. Every time Tiana showed up, like she belonged there, barefoot on my deck, wearing sunglasses, she left behind like markers. The security cameras did most of the work for me. I'd installed them years ago, after a package theft, never imagining how useful they'd be for something like this. The footage was clean, time-stamped, indisputable. While Aaron hosted poolside brunches and filmed reels about abundance, I was building a file that told a very different story. 3 days after the apology, I met Helen. She was exactly the kind of lawyer you want when you're done being underestimated. Sharp, efficient, not interested in drama, only outcomes. I laid everything out: the house, purchase, the lack of lease, the credit card, the charges, the ex-girlfriend, the behavior. She didn't interrupt, just took notes and nodded, occasionally asking a question so precise it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in months. When I finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. "The house is yours," she said plainly. "Bought before he moved in. Paid for entirely by you. He's a tenant at will at best. No lease, no equity, no rights beyond notice." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, more like confirmation. "And the credit card?" I asked. She gave me a look that wasn't surprised at all. "Fraudulent use. Especially since you didn't authorize these specific expenses. We'll document everything. Legal, clean, predictable." That night, I met Julianne, the realtor. She was recommended by Helen, which already told me enough. Julianne had eyes like she could calculate profit margins just by standing in a room. She walked through my house with a calm, professional smile, stepping around ring lights and half-empty champagne flutes like they were invisible. "It's a great property," she said, "but timing will be important." "I know," I replied. "I want it done carefully." She glanced at me, or strategically. I smiled for real this time. We signed the listing agreement a week later. By then, Aaron had fully leaned into the fantasy that he owned me. He told people the car was his now that I'd given it to him as an apology. He introduced Tiana as part of the team and let her lounge by my pool like she was auditioning for permanence. He talked about expansion, about how this house was just the beginning. I listened, I documented, I waited. Saturday arrived, bright and perfect, the kind of day that makes everything look intentional. Aaron had planned one of his biggest brunches yet. 30 influencers catered food, branded cocktails, music, thumping through speakers I'd paid for. At exactly 12:45 p.m., I changed clothes. I put on a suit I hadn't worn in months. Not dramatic, not flashy, just sharp enough to remind myself who I was before I let someone else rewrite the narrative. At 1:00 p.m. on the dot, a tasteful, expensive SUV pulled into the driveway. Aaron frowned when he saw me step outside. "Where are you going?" he asked. "And why are you dressed like that? You look intense." I didn't answer. Julianne stepped out first, leather-bound folder in hand, followed by a well-dressed couple in their 50s. Calm, curious, serious buyers. She smiled at me like we were old colleagues. "Selena, good to see you." Then she turned, eyes landing on Aaron, who was suddenly very still. "And this must be the current resident," she said pleasantly. The music seemed to dim without anyone touching it. Conversations stalled. Phones lowered. I spoke clearly, calmly, so everyone could hear. "This is Julianne from Premier Properties," I said. "And these are the Thompsons. They're here for the 1 o'clock private viewing." Aaron blinked. Viewing. Julianne stepped forward, beaming. "Selena has decided to sell the property. We're starting with the outdoor spaces, so if you and your guests could clear the pool deck, that would be wonderful. We need to show the cabana." The silence that followed was exquisite. 30 people who'd been recording content seconds ago now stood frozen, holding phones like useless relics. Tiana straightened her smile, faltering. Someone near the bar quietly set down a mimosa. Aaron's voice cracked. "You can't be serious." I met his eyes, the same calm expression I'd worn the night he thought he'd crushed me. "I told you," I said softly. "You were right. I'd never leave you." His confusion flickered into panic. But the house, I continued, turning toward the buyers. "It's just an asset, and I'm liquidating it." I gestured toward the sliding doors. "If you'll follow me, the master suite gets beautiful light this time of day." As I walked away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear it, the party collapsing behind me, the illusion cracking in real time, the sound of a system finally rejecting corrupted data. And this time there was no undo button. The silence lingered longer than it should have. It wasn't dramatic at first, no screaming, no shouting, just a collective pause, like everyone's brain was trying to buffer what they'd just heard. 30 people who'd been laughing and posing moments earlier now stood around my pool holding glasses they'd forgotten to sip from phones hovering uselessly in their hands. Aaron was the first to break. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp but already thinning at the edges. "You can't just do this in front of everyone." "I'm not," I said evenly. "I'm showing my house." Julianne didn't miss a beat. She gestured politely toward the cabana, already slipping into her professional rhythm. "If we could start here, please. Outdoor entertaining spaces add tremendous value." Tiana stood up slowly from one of the loungers, her movements deliberate, controlled, like she was deciding whether to fight or flee. She tugged the borrowed robe tighter around herself, eyes flicking between Aaron and me, recalculating her position in real time. "This is insane," Aaron muttered. "You're embarrassing me." I turned to him, keeping my voice low but audible. "You embarrassed yourself. I just stopped paying for the set." That was when the first influencer quietly said, I think I have to go. Another followed, then another. The exodus wasn't loud. It was efficient. People gathered their bags, their sunglasses, their dignity. No one wanted to be associated with a narrative collapsing on camera. This wasn't content anymore. This was risk. Within minutes, the pool deck cleared, like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Tiana disappeared inside, then re-emerged moments later with her bag not looking at Aaron as she passed him. "Call me," he said desperately. She didn't respond. Julianne and the Thompsons toured the house with professional politeness, stepping around the wreckage of what had been a brand 30 minutes earlier. Aaron followed us at a distance, spiraling, alternating between rage and disbelief. After the buyers left, the storm finally broke. "You did this to humiliate me," he screamed, grabbing a ceramic vase from the console table, the one he'd bought for himself with my card, and hurling it against the wall. It shattered spectacularly. "You think you can just erase me?" I stood in the entryway and didn't flinch. "This isn't erasure," I said. "It's correction." He advanced on me, face red, hands shaking. "You can't sell my home." "It was never your home," I replied. "It was my patience." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded document. "This is a formal 30-day notice to vacate," I said calmly. "Drafted by my lawyer. You have until the 15th of next month." His mouth opened closed. 30 days. His voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged gently. "I'm sure you and Tiana can strategize something." I left that night, booked a hotel. I wasn't staying in a house with someone who'd just realized he'd lost control. The next 30 days were a masterclass in entitlement. Phase 1, the victim. He didn't pack, didn't plan. Instead, he called his mother. She rang me sobbing 2 days later. "Selena, please. He's fragile. You're his anchor." "I'm selling my house," I replied. "Your son has notice." She called me heartless. Phase 2, seduction. The texts started coming late at night. Apologies, photos, promises of change, of jobs, of love rediscovered. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to Helen. Phase 3 arrived quietly, and that was the most dangerous part. I'd been coordinating with Julianne for the open house. We needed to ensure Aaron couldn't sabotage it. So on Friday night, after checking the security feed and seeing the house empty, I drove over. The smell hit me the second I opened the door. Mildew. I stepped into the living room and froze. Water dripped from the ceiling. The plaster sagged. I ran upstairs to the master bath and found the freestanding tub overflowing water spilling over hardwood floors that had already begun to warp. It was deliberate, calculated. My phone buzzed. A text from Aaron. "OMG, Selena, the tub overflowed. Total disaster. Guess the house wants us to stay." My hands shook, but only for a second. Then I made 3 calls. Insurance, remediation, and Helen. When she heard, she exhaled slowly. "This is no longer civil," she said. "This is property damage." I closed my eyes. Aaron thought he'd delayed the inevitable. He didn't realize he had just accelerated it. After the flood, something in Aaron shifted. Not remorse, not fear. Certainty. He truly believed he'd forced my hand, that the damage would stall the sale, drain my resolve, and corner me into negotiation. He moved through the house like a man who thought he'd outsmarted the system, posting vague stories about fighting for what's yours and protecting your home from negativity. Every caption was a performance. Every smile was brittle. I didn't respond. I let the insurance adjusters, the remediation crew, and my lawyer handle the reality, while I watched the security feed from a hotel room that smelled like neutral detergent and freedom. The estimate came back worse than I'd hoped, over $30,000 in damage. Hardwood ruined, ceiling gutted, built-ins warped beyond repair, and the evidence was clean. The footage showed Aaron leaving the house hours before the text. The messages framed his surprise perfectly. The contractor's report confirmed the drain had been intentionally blocked. Helen didn't sound angry when she called. She sounded satisfied. "This gives us cause," she said. "We're filing for an emergency writ of possession." The 30-day notice becomes irrelevant. That was when Aaron's tactics escalated. The victim phase returned briefly long voicemails, where his voice cracked just enough to sound fragile. He talked about his childhood, about pressure, about how he felt unseen. He apologized without actually apologizing, circling the idea of responsibility without touching it. When that didn't work, he switched masks. Anger, blame, threats. He texted that he'd ruin my reputation. that he'd tell everyone I was abusive, controlling, cold. He accused me of jealousy, of being threatened by Tiana by his potential. I saved every message, every accusation, every contradiction. Then came bargaining. "I'll leave quietly," he wrote one night at 2:13 a.m. "Just give me 6 months. I need time. I need help." I didn't reply. What finally broke the illusion for him was silence. Not rage, not argument. Silence that didn't bend. The court moved faster than he expected. The judge reviewed the evidence, photos, footage, contractor estimates, texts, and signed the order without hesitation. Emergency possession. Enforced. Helen called me the morning it was finalized. "Tomorrow," she said. 8 a.m. Be there if you want closure, or don't. Either way, it's happening. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I drove to the house just after 7:30. The sky was clear, the neighborhood quiet. I parked down the street and waited. At 8 on the dot, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up, followed by a moving truck I'd arranged weeks earlier, quietly, just in case. Procedure, preparation. Aaron opened the door wearing a silk robe phone, already in his hand, smug smile preloaded. "Selena," he said, "come to negotiate." His smile died when he saw the uniforms. "Ma'am," one of the deputies said, calm but firm. "Are you Aaron Caldwell?" "Yes," he snapped. "What is this?" "We have a writ of possession for this property," the deputy continued. "You are no longer a legal resident. You have 1 hour to gather personal necessities. The rest will be removed." Aaron turned to me, eyes wild. "You did this. You ruined me." "No," I said quietly. "You did." He tried calling Tiana, straight to voicemail. He tried his mother. No answer. The deputies didn't rush him. They didn't argue. They simply waited. At 9, the movers arrived. They worked efficiently, boxing clothes, electronics, decor. Everything he'd curated dismantled piece by piece. The house emptied like a set being struck after a show that closed early. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Aaron stood on the lawn, holding a duffel bag robe, flapping in the breeze, face blotchy with rage and disbelief. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I handed the movers the storage unit key I'd prepaid for. 1 month, I said. After that, it's his problem. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Relief. People think the worst moment is the confrontation. It isn't. The worst moment is the quiet realization that someone you trusted is willing to destroy something just to avoid losing control. That they'd rather burn the house down than walk out with dignity. After eviction day, I thought the worst was over. The house was finally empty. The noise was gone. The air felt still again. But the damage he'd done physically and financially was only beginning to surface. The remediation team had torn out the living room ceiling and half the master bathroom. Fans roared day and night, pulling moisture out of the walls like the house itself was exhaling trauma. The hardwood floors were cupped beyond repair. The built-in shelving I'd commissioned years earlier, ruined. Every room smelled faintly of damp wood and disinfectant. The sale was paused. Not canceled, paused. And that mattered. Aaron thought the flood was his ace card, his final childish middle finger. In his mind, he'd forced me into a corner, insurance battles, delays, exhaustion. He believed I'd eventually cave just to make it stop. What he didn't understand was that I build systems for a living. And systems don't respond to emotion. They respond to inputs. The insurance company called it suspicious. The adjuster used that careful tone people use when they already know the answer but need the paperwork to catch up. I sent them everything. The timestamps, the footage, the text where Aaron pretended surprise hours after leaving the water running. They approved the claim but flagged a portion as deliberate damage. That meant deductible, out-of-pocket costs, which meant liability. Helen laid it out cleanly during our next meeting. The fraudulent charges are one case, she said. The flood is another. Together they're well within small claims limits, and given the evidence, he doesn't have a defense. I nodded calm on the outside, simmering underneath. How much, I asked. She slid a paper across the table. $25,000. The number sat there neat and final. File it, I said. Aaron never responded to the summons. He never showed up to court. He was still spinning his own version of reality, posting cryptic stories from his mother's house, talking about rebirth and injustice and how strong he was for surviving toxicity. His followers thinned quietly like people backing away from a fire they didn't want to be near. The judge ruled in my favor by default. A full judgment. Legally binding. Enforceable. I sent it to collections the same day. Not out of cruelty. Out of closure. The house repairs took another month. I approved every invoice without flinching. Money can be earned back. Peace is harder to replace. When the last coat of paint dried and the floors were finally smooth again, Julianne relisted the property. It sold. Not at the price it should have, but at a price I accepted gladly. I signed the closing documents without ceremony, handed over the keys, and walked out of that house for the last time, knowing something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't just free of Aaron. I was free of the version of myself who thought endurance was the same thing as love. 2 months after the flood, my life looked nothing like it had before, and that was intentional. I was living in a rented condo downtown, all glass and clean lines and silence. No echo of parties. No lingering scent of someone else's cologne. Just space. Honest space. I slept with the windows cracked and woke up without bracing myself for conflict. That alone felt like wealth. But the story wasn't finished yet. The legal machinery kept moving, indifferent to Aaron's emotions posts or disappearing act. Collections had begun their work, methodical, relentless. Judgments don't care about aesthetics or branding. They don't respond to captions. They respond to numbers. Aaron tried reaching out once more after the judgment hit his credit. This time there was no performance, no manipulation. Just panic. He left a voicemail that was almost unrecognizable. Voice hoarse, breathing. Uneven words, tumbling over each other, as he asked how this could happen, how I could do this to him, how he'd never be able to rent anywhere now, how his life was basically over. I listened once, then I deleted it, because this wasn't happening to him. It was happening because of him. The neighbors from my old street messaged, occasionally filling in details I hadn't asked for but appreciated anyway. Aaron had been back once, weeks after the eviction, standing on the sidewalk, staring at the house like it might remember him. The new owners hadn't recognized him. Why would they? He was just a stranger lingering too long near someone else's property. There was something poetic about that. I ran into Julianne for coffee after the sale finalized. She raised her cup in a small toast. You handled that better than most people would. I didn't handle it, I said. I documented it. She laughed. That's handling. At night, when the city hummed outside my windows, I replayed certain moments, not with regret, but with clarity. The night he laughed at me, the way he'd said I was too boring to leave him, how confident he'd been that I'd always stay. He hadn't understood something fundamental. Predictable doesn't mean powerless. It means prepared. Stop. Part 7, the aftermath. Here's what happens after the noise stops. The house was gone. Sold. Someone else's memories now. The judgment sat in a system that would follow Aaron for years on every application, every background check, every attempt to start over without accountability. It wasn't revenge. It was a record. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved back into his childhood bedroom with his mother, that his influencer friends had quietly unfollowed him when the content dried up, that Tiana had blocked him everywhere, no farewell, no explanation, just absence. Funny how quickly people disappear when the money does. His career couldn't survive without the house as a backdrop. Turns out you can't curate abundance from a twin bed with a floral comforter. His following dwindled. Engagement collapsed, sponsorships vanished. A lifestyle built on illusion doesn't weather reality well. As for me, I started dating again, not recklessly, not desperately, carefully, thoughtfully. I met someone through a friend. A man who asked questions and listened to the answers, who didn't confuse confidence with entitlement or attention with affection. No grand declarations, just consistency. He once asked why I seemed so calm about everything I'd been through. I thought about it before answering. Because I didn't win by being louder, I said. I won by being accurate. Aaron had thought strength looked like chaos, like domination, like taking up space and daring people to challenge it. He forgot something crucial. I'm the one who builds systems. I'm the one who documents. I'm the one who plans for failure and then designs around it. He thought he was a storm. He never realized I was the person who builds storm shelters. And when the wind finally died down, I was the only one left standing comfortably inside. My name is Beverly Farrell, and I'm 34 years old. Until one quiet sentence in an Italian restaurant, I believed I was in a stable, committed relationship with the man I'd been dating for 2.5 years. We met the way most modern couples do, through mutual friends at a birthday party. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just an easy conversation that turned into drinks, then weekends together, then the unspoken assumption that we were building towards something solid. He worked in software development. I worked in digital marketing. Different worlds, compatible rhythms. We didn't live together yet, but we spent most weekends at each other's places and talked casually about moving in soon like it was inevitable. That Friday night was supposed to be ordinary, a date night. My idea. I'd finally secured a reservation at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with low lighting, white tablecloths, and a wine list that made you feel adult just by holding it. I'd been excited about it for weeks. When I picked him up, he seemed normal, relaxed. He talked about work, about a project he was leading, about how glad he was the week was over. Standard date night energy. Nothing felt wrong. Not yet. We ordered appetizers, entrees, a bottle of red wine the server recommended. The conversation flowed easily at first: weekend plans, a concert next month, the usual couple talk that fills space comfortably when you think everything is fine. But somewhere between the main course and the last half glass of wine, his energy shifted. He started checking his phone more often. Not aggressively, just enough to register, enough to feel like I wasn't the only thing in front of him anymore. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting my fork down. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just work stuff. Campaign deadlines don't care about weekends, right?" I nodded and let it go. I didn't want to be that person, the suspicious girlfriend. I trusted him, or at least I thought I did. The waiter came back to clear our plates and asked if we wanted dessert. "Just the check, please," my boyfriend said before I could answer. The waiter nodded and walked away. I took a slow sip of wine, watching my boyfriend scroll through his phone thumb, moving like he was trying to outrun a thought. 5 minutes later, the waiter returned and placed the leather bill folder between us. My boyfriend reached for it immediately, opened it, glanced at the total. Then he looked up at the waiter and said clearly, evenly, "Please split the bill. We're not really together." The table went silent. The waiter froze. His eyes flicked to me, confused, uncomfortable, young enough to not know where to put his face. I felt heat rise up my neck, my chest tightening, but I kept my expression neutral. I nodded once. "Sure," I said, "split it." No argument, no scene. My boyfriend handed over his card without looking at me. I placed mine beside it. The waiter took both like they were live wires and disappeared. "We're not really together," I repeated quietly once he was gone. "That's interesting phrasing." "I meant financially," he said. "We split things." "You said exactly what you meant," I replied. "You just didn't think I'd hear it." "Can we not do this here?" he snapped. Do what I asked calmly. React. The waiter returned with 2 receipts. I signed mine and tipped 20%. He didn't deserve to suffer for our mess. My boyfriend tipped 15 like he always did. Outside on the sidewalk, he turned to me. "Are you driving me home, or are you going to pout all night?" "I'm driving you home," I said. "But we're talking." The drive was silent until I stopped the car outside his building. "What was that?" I asked. He exhaled sharply. "Fine. I've been thinking about us for a while." "And you decided to announce it to a waiter," I said, "instead of me." "It just came out." "Yes," I said softly. "The truth usually does." When he got out of the car, he said, "I think we need space." I watched him walk away, then drove home. That night I didn't cry. I didn't call a friend. I didn't send paragraphs of texts. I did one quiet thing. I removed him from my family phone plan. We weren't really together after all. I woke up Saturday morning to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand, vibrating itself inch by inch toward the edge, like it wanted to escape the room before I did. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring. It stopped, started again, stopped, and started a third time. I answered on the 4th. "What did you do?" His voice was sharp, clipped already halfway into anger. "Good morning," I said, padding into the kitchen. I pressed the button on the coffee maker and leaned against the counter. "What's wrong?" "My phone service changed," he said. "I got a notification saying I'm on an individual plan now." "Yes," I said calmly. "That's correct." There was a pause on the line, the kind where someone is recalibrating because the reaction they expected didn't arrive. "Why would you do that?" he demanded. I poured water into the coffee filter slowly, deliberately. "Because we're not really together." "You're being petty," he snapped. "No," I said. "I'm being practical." "What does that even mean?" "It means 2 people who aren't really together don't need to share a phone plan," I said. "You made that very clear last night." "That's not what I meant, and you know it," he said. "I said I needed space." "You didn't," I replied. "You told a stranger we weren't really together. I'm just respecting that." "This is a punishment," he accused. "You're trying to teach me a lesson." I took my mug and sat at the table. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm adjusting my life to match your words." He scoffed. "This is ridiculous." "So was announcing the status of our relationship to a waiter," I said evenly. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. "You're overreacting," he finally said. "I'm responding," I corrected. "There's a difference." "I said I needed space," he repeated softer now. "And you have it," I said. "Your own phone plan, your own space." He hung up without saying goodbye. I drank my coffee, laced up my shoes, and went for a run. I didn't do it to clear my head. I did it to burn off the restless energy buzzing under my skin, the kind that comes from holding your composure when part of you wants to scream. By the time I got back, my phone was full of texts. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was stressed. Can we please talk like adults? This is not worth ending things over. I stared at the screen for a long moment before responding. We can talk when you're ready to explain what you meant by, we're not really together. Until then, we're not really together. That was it. One message, no paragraphs, no emotional bargaining. The text stopped. On Sunday morning, there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole and saw him standing there with a cardboard tray of coffee and a paper bag from the bakery down the street, the one I liked, the one he knew I liked. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Peace offering, he said, lifting the bag slightly. I'm listening, I replied. Can I come in? I'm fine talking here. His smile faltered. He lowered the bag. You're really going to make this difficult. You made it difficult Friday night, I said. I'm just following through. I made a mistake, he said quickly. I was stressed. About work, about us. It came out wrong. It came out honestly, I said. Those aren't the same thing. That's not fair, he said. It's accurate. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. I don't want to break up. Who said anything about breaking up? I asked. We're just not really together. Remember. Stop throwing that in my face. Why, I asked. You were comfortable saying it in public. He set the bag down on the floor between us. I'm sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have said it like that. There it was. An apology. Real this time. But apologies don't rewind moments. They don't erase humiliation. Why did you say it? I asked. Why that phrase? Why then? He hesitated, eyes flicking away. Sometimes, he said slowly, I feel like we're more like roommates who sleep together than partners. We're always working. We see each other on weekends and call it a relationship. The words landed heavy in my chest. So you've been feeling this way for a while, I said. Yes. And you didn't think to mention it until you were embarrassed about a restaurant bill, I said. He winced. I didn't plan it. It just came out. That's what worries me, I said quietly. Because when people are stressed, they say what they've already been thinking. He swallowed. I don't want to lose you. I need time, I said. How much? However long it takes. He picked up the bag, then hesitated. Are you seeing someone else? I looked at him, stunned. What? Are you talking to someone? He pressed. Is that why you're being so cold? I'm being cold because my boyfriend told a stranger we weren't together, I said. There's no one else. There's barely an us right now. He nodded slowly and left. I closed the door and stared at the coffee and pastries sitting on my kitchen counter. I didn't touch them. I just sat there thinking about 2.5 years of my life and how one sentence had cracked something that might never fit back together the same way. By Monday morning, the shock had dulled into something heavier. Not pain exactly, but a constant pressure behind my ribs, like I was carrying a truth my body hadn't figured out how to process yet. I went to work. I answered emails. I sat in meetings and nodded at the right moments. From the outside, I looked fine. On the inside, I kept replaying the same scene on a loop. The waiter's face, the pause, the words, "We're not really together," said so casually, it was almost cruel. Around lunchtime, I retreated to my car in the parking garage, needing air, needing space. I'd just closed the door when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Hello. Hi, a young man's voice said. This is going to sound really strange, but I was your waiter on Friday night at the Italian restaurant. My stomach dropped. Yes, I said carefully. I know this is unprofessional, he rushed on, and I debated calling at all. But I found your number on the receipt tied to the reservation system, and after what happened, I felt like you should know something. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Know what? She came back, he said. Saturday night. With another guy. The air seemed to thin. What I whispered. They sat at my table again, he continued. Same wine, same appetizers. They seemed familiar, close, laughing, touching. I don't know your situation, but it didn't feel right not to tell you. Did she recognize you? I asked. Oh yeah, he said. She looked uncomfortable for about 5 seconds, then acted like Friday never happened. Left a huge tip. Of course she did. Thank you for telling me, I said, even though my hands were shaking. I'm really sorry, he said. I've never done anything like this before. I appreciate it, I replied. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the concrete wall in front of my car, my pulse roaring in my ears. Less than 24 hours after telling me we weren't really together, he'd taken another woman, a woman I'd never heard of, to the same restaurant. I called him, straight to voicemail. I called again, voicemail. I texted once. We need to talk, now. No response. I finished the workday on autopilot, drove to his apartment and parked out front. His car was there. I buzzed his unit. Nothing. I buzzed again. My phone rang. What he snapped. I'm busy. I'm downstairs, I said. Buzz me up. Silence. If you don't, I added calmly, I'll keep buzzing until someone lets me in. 30 seconds later, the door clicked. I rode the elevator to his floor, my heartbeat steady in a way that surprised me. His door was already open. He stood there in sweatpants and a hoodie, arms crossed, eyes guarded. What's so urgent, he asked. You were at the restaurant Saturday, I said, with someone else. His face went pale. Who told you that? Doesn't matter, I said. Is it true? It's not what you think, he said quickly. Then explain it. She's a coworker, he said. We had a work lunch that ran late. At 8 p.m. on a Saturday, I said. With wine. You're being paranoid. The waiter called me, I said. He thought I should know. He laughed sharp and forced. That's insane. That's harassment. Stop deflecting, I said. Who is she? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. How long, I asked. Nothing happened, he said. How long have you been seeing her, I repeated. We're friends, he insisted. We work together. Friends don't go to romantic restaurants on Saturday nights, I said. Friends don't order wine and get touchy. And friends don't humiliate their girlfriends so they can pretend they're single. You're twisting this, he snapped. I'm listing facts, I replied. You said we're not really together. Less than a day later, you're on a date with someone else at the same place drinking the same wine. He wiped his eyes. Tears surfaced suddenly like they'd been waiting for permission. I didn't plan any of this, he said. Things just happened. Things don't just happen, I said. You made choices. What do you want me to say, he asked. I want you to admit what you're doing, I said. Stop pretending this is about needing space. He looked at me for a long moment. Fine, he said quietly. Yes, I've been talking to her. We've gotten close. There it was. And Friday night, he continued, I realized I couldn't keep pretending. Pretending what I asked. That I still wanted this, he said. That I still wanted us. The truth finally had a shape. Then why not just break up with me? I asked. Why humiliate me in public? I wasn't sure, he said. I thought it was just a crush. But it wasn't, I said. No. I nodded slowly. Thank you for finally being honest. I turned toward the door. That's it, he called after me. You're just leaving. What else is there to say, I asked. You made your choice. You're not even going to fight for this. I turned back. You told a stranger we weren't really together. Then you went on a date with someone else. What exactly am I supposed to fight for? He didn't answer. I walked out. The week after I walked out of his apartment felt unreal, like I'd stepped into a version of my life where everything looked familiar but sounded wrong. I went quiet. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I didn't update my relationship status. I didn't call friends to cry on their couches or narrate every ugly detail. I just withdrew. I went to work, came home, cooked simple meals, slept early. I let my nervous system catch up to what my mind already knew was over. I changed the locks on my apartment. He'd had a spare key for emergencies, or what we'd called emergencies. I canceled the streaming services we shared, removed him from my emergency contacts, and boxed up the handful of things he'd left at my place. Not as revenge, as closure. For a few days, my phone stayed quiet. Then it started. A message from a mutual friend, someone we both knew from that birthday party where we'd met. Hey, I heard about you and him. I'm really sorry. I replied with a simple thank you. Nothing more. A few minutes later, he called. Listen, he said, sounding hesitant. I wanted to check in because, well, there's a version of this going around and it doesn't sound right. I leaned back against my kitchen counter. What version? He's telling people you broke up with him out of nowhere, he said. That you accused him of cheating with no proof and just walked away. I closed my eyes. Of course he was. I figured, I said calmly. So what actually happened, my friend asked. I told him. The restaurant, the waiter, the phone plan, the coworker, the confrontation. I kept my voice steady even when my chest tightened around certain details. When I finished, there was a long pause. Wow, he finally said. That's manipulative as hell. I let out a slow breath. Yeah. For what it's worth, he continued. A few of us have felt something was off with him lately. He's been distant, defensive. We wondered if something was going on. Well, I said, now you know. Do you want me to set the record straight? He asked. I don't like him spreading lies about you. I considered it for a moment. Do what you want, I said. I'm not interested in managing narratives. He laughed softly. Fair enough. I just wanted to ask first. After we hung up, I felt a flicker of something like relief. Not because the truth would come out, but because I didn't need it to. The people who mattered would see it. The ones who didn't weren't people I needed to keep close. A few days later, I got a text from him. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. I didn't respond. Another came that night. You're letting people turn you against me. Still nothing. The thing about stepping back is that it reveals patterns you couldn't see while you were standing inside them. Every message he sent framed himself as the victim misunderstood, unfairly judged, abandoned without mercy. Not once did he acknowledge the humiliation, the betrayal, the lies. A week passed, then another. I started sleeping better, eating better. The constant low-grade anxiety I'd lived with, the one I'd always blamed on work, began to fade. 2 weeks after the restaurant, my phone rang again. Same mutual friend. He came by my place, he said. Drinking. Talking about how he messed up. That's unfortunate, I said. He says he misses you, my friend added. Says you were the best thing in his life. I smiled faintly. People usually realize that once they lose it. He asked if you'd talk to him. No, I said without hesitation. Fair, my friend replied. Just wanted to check. That night I thought about how quickly someone can rewrite history when the original version makes them look bad. How easy it is to paint a woman as cold, unforgiving, dramatic, especially when she doesn't scream or beg or chase. I didn't need to defend myself. Silence was doing the work for me. 3 weeks after the restaurant, I was folding laundry on my couch when someone knocked on my door. Not the polite, hesitant knock of a delivery driver, not the casual tap of a neighbor. This knock was familiar, insistent, confident in a way that assumed it would be answered. I froze. Then it came again. Beverly, his voice called through the door. I know you're home. I didn't move. I can hear you, he added. Please, just 5 minutes. I stood, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. He was there, eyes tired, shoulders slumped, holding nothing this time. No coffee, no pastries, no peace offering wrapped in paper. Just regret. Go away, I said through the door. It didn't work out, he said quickly, words tumbling over each other. With her. You were right. I closed my eyes. Please, he continued. I made a huge mistake. I opened the door, but kept the chain on. He looked relieved. Just seeing my face like that alone meant something had shifted. It was just infatuation, he said. I confused excitement for connection. I see that now. I studied him quietly, the dark circles under his eyes, the rehearsed sincerity. And I asked, and I want to fix this, he said. I want to do it right this time. There is no right version of this, I said. Not anymore. I still love you, he said desperately. I never stopped. I tilted my head slightly. You love the idea that I was still here. That's not fair, he said. It's completely fair, I replied. You kept me in place while you explored something else. When it didn't work, you came back. He shook his head. I didn't plan it that way. You didn't have to, I said. Your actions did it for you. Tears filled his eyes. I messed up, he whispered. Can't you forgive that? I can forgive you, I said gently. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. He stared at me like he didn't understand the language I was speaking. So that's it, he asked. We're just done. We were done the moment you told a waiter we weren't really together, I said. Everything after that was just confirmation. He swallowed hard. I wish I could take it back. So do I said. But you can't take back moments of truth. He reached for the chain instinctively, then stopped himself. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said. But you did. And knowing better now doesn't undo it. He stood there for a long moment, then nodded, defeated. I guess this is goodbye. It already was, I said softly. I closed the door and locked it. He knocked once more quietly this time, then left. I leaned my forehead against the door and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for weeks. 4 months passed. Not dramatically, not in a montage of tearful nights and sudden breakthroughs. Time moved the way it always does, quietly, steadily, and somewhere in the middle of it, I realized I was breathing easier again. The first change was sleep. Deep, uninterrupted sleep. The kind I hadn't realized I'd been missing until it returned. I stopped waking up with a tight chest, stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning like I was bracing for impact. I joined a gym near my apartment. Nothing extreme, just enough to remind my body it was still mine. I started cooking again, real meals, not rushed leftovers, eaten standing at the counter. I picked up hobbies I'd slowly abandoned while trying to be emotionally available to someone who was already halfway gone. The silence in my apartment stopped feeling empty and started feeling intentional. A few friends reached out, mutuals, who'd heard different versions of the story and wanted clarity. Some apologized for believing his side without asking mine. I accepted those apologies without resentment. People don't always get it right the first time. Others didn't reach out at all. A few openly took his side. Said things like, relationships take work, or you should have tried harder to communicate. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I let those connections fade naturally. No anger, just clarity. One afternoon, I ran into the mutual friend who'd warned me early on. We had coffee. He told me the truth had quietly corrected itself. Most people see it now, he said. The way everything unfolded, the overlap, the lying. "That's good," I replied, surprised to realize how little it mattered to me. He hesitated. He and the coworker tried to make it work. I raised an eyebrow. "How'd that go?" "6 weeks," he said. Then it imploded. Apparently he has commitment issues. I laughed once softly. That's poetic. He left his job not long after my friend added. Too awkward to stay. I nodded, more amused than vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt confirmed. The waiter crossed my mind occasionally, the stranger who'd chosen honesty over convenience. A few weeks earlier, we'd met for coffee, nothing heavy. He'd apologized again for getting involved. "You did me a favor," I'd told him, even if it hurt. I'd bought him dinner at a different restaurant. Not as a date, just as a thank you. We weren't friends exactly, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. Sometimes the people who show up at pivotal moments aren't meant to stay, they're meant to redirect you. I went on a few dates. Casual, low stakes. I took my time, asked better questions, paid attention to how people showed up, not just how they spoke. I wasn't in a hurry anymore, because I finally understood something I hadn't before. Peace isn't boring. It's rare. And I wasn't willing to trade it for uncertainty again. People still ask me about it sometimes. Not in a dramatic way, more like a sideways curiosity, usually over drinks or during a long walk. They want to know if I regret how I handled it. If I wish I'd said more, if I should have caused a scene at the restaurant, demanded answers right there, forced him to explain himself in front of everyone. The truth is, I thought about all of that afterward. I imagined standing up from the table, my voice shaking, but loud enough to turn heads. I imagined asking him who she was, why he'd been texting all night, why he needed to humiliate me to feel free. I imagined storming out, leaving him with the bill and a lesson. But none of that would have changed the outcome. He still would have wanted someone else. I still would have been blindsided. The relationship still would have ended. It just would have been messier. What people don't understand is that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's restraint. Sometimes it's clarity. Sometimes it's the moment you realize there's nothing left to argue for. He told a stranger we weren't really together, and he meant it. That sentence didn't slip. It didn't accidentally fall out of his mouth. It came from a place he'd been standing in for a while, a place where I was optional, where commitment felt negotiable, where honesty mattered only when it was convenient. Everything that followed the phone plan, the distance, the refusal to engage with his attempts to rewrite history, wasn't punishment. It was alignment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I didn't compete with another woman for his attention. I simply adjusted my life to match his words. When he realized the other relationship wasn't better, when the excitement wore off and the consequences settled in, he came back hoping I'd still be there, hoping the door he'd casually pushed open for himself would still be unlocked. It wasn't. Because love isn't about proximity, it's about choice. And the moment he chose to tell the world we weren't really together, he freed me from pretending otherwise. The bill was split evenly that night. The relationship wasn't. And somewhere in the quiet aftermath, in the mornings without anxiety, the evenings without doubt, the relationships that didn't require me to decode silence, I learned something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. The calm response is often the most powerful one. You don't always need closure. You don't always need an apology. You don't always need the last word. Sometimes all you need to do is believe people when they show you who you are and walk away without asking them to repeat it. My name is Pamela Mullings and I'm 29 years old. Until 2 weeks ago, I was planning a wedding for next spring. My fiancé said it quietly, like he didn't want the words to echo. I don't think we should act engaged in public anymore. I answered, understood. I didn't ask why. I didn't argue. I didn't correct him. And that alone should have told me everything. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. Long enough that everyone else thought we were solid, long enough that the word forever had already been casually assigned to us by friends, family, even strangers. His parents loved me. My family adored him. Our friends joked that we were the couple that made everyone else look bad. Relationship goals, stable, safe. On paper, we were flawless. The conversation that cracked everything open happened on a Tuesday evening in his apartment. Technically, our apartment, though I'd kept my lease as a backup. I told myself it was practical. Month-to-month leases were unpredictable. Now I know it was instinct. We had just finished dinner. Nothing special. Pasta, salad, the kind of meal you make when life feels routine and dependable. We were cleaning up together like always. I washed. He dried. It was comfortable, familiar. Then he said, I've been thinking about something. I kept scrubbing the plate. Yeah, what's up? He didn't look at me, just folded the dish towel over and over in his hands. I don't think we should act engaged in public anymore. I stopped moving but didn't turn off the water. Just stood there, letting it run over porcelain while my chest tightened. Okay, I said after a beat. He looked up startled. That's it. What else is there? I replied calmly. You don't want to act engaged. I heard you. He waited, clearly expecting more. A protest, a plea, a fight. You're not upset, he asked. I didn't say no. I said nothing. Because what would being upset have accomplished right then? He'd already made the request. The damage was already done. We finished cleaning in silence. That night I barely slept. His words replayed on a loop, growing heavier every time. Engaged people who want to be engaged don't ask to hide it. They don't feel suffocated by commitment. They feel proud of it. Over the next few days, the things I'd been ignoring came into focus. The way he tilted his phone away when texting. The sudden increase in after-work drinks. The way wedding planning only came up if I forced it into the conversation. On Thursday morning, he reminded me about dinner with his parents that weekend. And maybe he added casually, let's not talk about wedding stuff. I told them we're still figuring things out. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. On Friday afternoon, I made a decision. I went to a jeweler not to resize his ring. Mine. I'd wanted one too when we got engaged. A visible symbol that we were choosing each other equally. Simple, unflashy, something I wore every day. How long will it take? I asked. A few hours. Perfect. I picked it up at 5:30, and inside it, engraved where no one else could see, were 3 words. He said no. I didn't put it back on. Saturday was coming, and I was done pretending I didn't know what that meant. Saturday arrived with the kind of false normalcy that only exists right before something breaks. He was chatty in the car, filling the space with office gossip and a story about a ridiculous email chain at work. I responded when it felt appropriate, nodded when expected, laughed in the right places. From the outside, we probably looked like the same couple everyone had always known. Inside, I felt like I was watching us from a distance already removed. He never once glanced at my left hand. Or if he did, he chose not to see what was missing. We pulled into his parents' driveway right at 6. His mother opened the door with a smile that always felt genuine, the kind that made you believe she meant it when she said she was happy you were there. She hugged me, warm and familiar. His father shook my hand, asked how work was going, made a joke about how time was moving too fast. All the usual rituals. All the things that had once made this place feel like a second home. His sister arrived shortly after with her husband and their 2 kids. The house filled with noise, shoes kicked off by the door. Children running ahead to claim the living room, overlapping conversations. I let myself get distracted kneeling on the floor with the kids as they showed me their new toys. For a few minutes, I almost forgot why my chest felt tight. Dinner was roast chicken, just like always. Family style passed from hand to hand. His mother was mid-sentence, asking his sister about something work-related when she stopped. Her eyes were fixed on my hand as I reached for the salad bowl. Pamela, she said slowly, where's your ring? The table went still. Every sound seemed to drop away at once. Forks paused midair. Conversations died unfinished. I felt everyone's attention land on me, then slide toward him. I had it resized, I said calmly. Picked it up yesterday. I decided not to wear it anymore. He went pale. What, he asked. Why wouldn't you wear it? I didn't look at him when I answered. I looked directly at his mother. Because he asked me not to act engaged in public anymore, I said. And wearing an engagement ring feels like acting engaged. The silence that followed was different, heavier. His mother's expression shifted from confusion to concern. His father set his fork down carefully, like he was bracing for something he didn't want to hear. I did, he said quickly. I just meant, you asked me on Tuesday, I continued evenly, to stop acting engaged in public. You said it was too much pressure, too many expectations, so I respected that. His sister frowned. You told her that. He stood abruptly. Can we talk about this privately? I finally looked at him then. Why? You're embarrassing me. No, I said. You embarrassed yourself when you made the request. This is just the truth. His father cleared his throat. Is this true? He looked around the table at the faces that had once felt like an extension of our future. He hesitated. You're making it sound worse than it is, he said finally. I just needed space to breathe. Space from what his sister asked? From everyone asking about the wedding, he snapped. From opinions. From expectations. His mother frowned. So instead of telling people to back off, you told her to hide the engagement. He didn't answer. I pushed my chair back. I should go. Thank you for dinner. Wait, his father said. Let's slow down. There's no need for this to end tonight. There's nothing to slow down, I replied. He made his position clear. I'm just responding to it. I walked out without looking back. The drive to my apartment felt unreal, like I was moving through a version of my life that no longer belonged to me. When I got inside, the silence was overwhelming, but also strangely comforting. This place was still mine. I hadn't imagined the need for it. That night, my phone lit up. 14 missed calls, 26 messages, anger, confusion, apologies, accusations. I read them all. I didn't respond. Around midnight, the buzzer sounded. Let me up, his voice came through the intercom. We need to talk. Not tonight. Please, I need to explain. You already did, I said quietly. You don't want to act engaged. Message received. That's not what I meant. Then figure out what you did mean, I said. Because I'm done guessing. I hung up. He buzzed 4 more times, then stopped. Sunday morning, his mother called. I'm sorry about last night, she said gently. That was a lot. It wasn't your fault, I replied. I know, she said. But I want you to know, I think you handled it with more grace than most people could. I stared out the window at the quiet street below. I just told the truth. And sometimes, she said softly, the truth is the hardest thing to hear. When we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hand. Bare. And for the first time, I understood that the ring hadn't been the commitment. Honesty had been. And he'd already let go of that. Monday morning arrived without ceremony, like the world hadn't noticed that my future had collapsed over a roast chicken and a missing ring. I went to work. I answered emails. I sat through meetings and nodded at the right moments. From the outside, I was functioning. Inside, everything felt muted, like someone had turned the volume down on my emotions, just enough to keep me upright. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a text from his sister. We need to talk. I owe you the truth. I stared at the screen longer than necessary before replying. Call me. She didn't waste time with small talk. Pamela, the reason he asked you not to act engaged, it wasn't about pressure. I closed my eyes. Then what was it about? There's a woman at his office, a coworker. She's been flirting with him for a while. The words landed slowly, like each one needed permission to exist before the next could follow. He didn't want to shut it down, she continued. He liked the attention, but he also didn't want to cheat. So instead of choosing, he tried to create this middle space, a place where he could pretend he was single, I said flatly. Yes. I felt something inside me finally settle, not relief, clarity. Did he do anything with her? I asked. He says no, just flirting, lunches, texting, enough to make him wonder if the grass was greener. I let out a quiet breath. So he asked me to stop acting engaged so he wouldn't have to lie. Her silence confirmed it. I told him he was being selfish, she said, that he didn't get to keep you as a safety net while he explored his options. He cried, said he messed up, said he wants to fix it. Does he want to fix it because he loves me, I asked, or because he got caught? She hesitated. I honestly don't know. That evening, he showed up at my apartment again. This time I let him in. He looked wrecked, eyes red, hair pulled back carelessly. He was wearing one of my old hoodies, the one I'd left at his place months ago and never bothered to take back. I need to tell you something, he said the second the door closed. I already know, I replied. Your sister told me. He froze. She told you about her? Yes. I didn't do anything, he rushed out. I swear. Nothing physical. You did something worse, I said. You kept the door open. He stared at me confused. You asked me to stop acting engaged so you could explore attention from another woman without technically cheating. I continued. You wanted to feel wanted without giving anything up. That's not what I was doing, he said weakly. That's exactly what you were doing. He started crying then. Full body sobs, like the weight of his choices had finally become too heavy to carry. I was scared, he said. Getting married felt final. And then she started complimenting me, and it felt good, and I didn't know how to handle it. So you handled it by lying to me, I said quietly. By lying to your parents. By asking me to hide our engagement so you could decide if I was still enough for you. He couldn't look at me. If I hadn't told the truth at that dinner, I continued, how long would this have gone on? He didn't answer. You would have kept me waiting, I said, hanging on while you figured out whether leaving me was worth it. I love you, he whispered. I don't want to lose you. Then why didn't you shut it down the first time she flirted with you? I asked. Why didn't you say you were engaged? He opened his mouth, closed it again. I think you should go, I said. His eyes widened. Are we done? I don't know, I replied honestly. But I know I can't marry someone who isn't sure they want to marry me. And you've made it very clear that you're not. He left without arguing. The next 2 weeks were brutal. He texted, called, apologized, promised, asked for another chance. I didn't block him, but I didn't give him hope either. Short replies, boundaries, silence where silence was necessary. Then his mother called again. She asked if I'd come to dinner, Just me and his parents. I almost said no, but something told me this conversation mattered. When I arrived, his father opened the door looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "We just want you to know," his mother said later, coffee warming her hands, "that whatever you decide, we understand." I nodded, sensing there was more. "He ended things with her," she continued. "Told her he was engaged. He's in therapy now, trying to understand why he did this." "That's good for him," I said. "I hope he figures it out." "Do you think you could ever trust him again?" his father asked gently. I thought about it. "I don't know," I said. "Trust isn't something you decide to give back. It's earned. And I don't know if I have the energy to wait and see if he earns it." They didn't argue. They didn't push. When I left, his mother hugged me tightly. "You deserve someone who never makes you question your place," she whispered. I walked out knowing something was ending. Not with anger, but with clarity. The days after that dinner blurred together in a way that made time feel unreliable. Some mornings I woke up convinced it had all been a misunderstanding, something that could still be repaired if I just explained myself better, listened harder, softened my edges. Other mornings I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that told me with brutal clarity that this wasn't confusion anymore, it was grief. He kept reaching out, not desperately at first, carefully, as if he was testing how much space he was allowed before I pulled away completely. Short messages, apologies without demands, promises without timelines. I didn't block him. I also didn't engage beyond what felt necessary. "I'm okay. I need time. I can't talk about this yet." Every response felt like I was drawing a boundary with shaking hands. About a week later, he asked if we could meet, just to talk. No expectations, no pressure. I said no, not because I didn't care, but because I cared enough to know that seeing him again too soon would pull me backward into a version of myself that kept making excuses for him. A few days after that, his mother called. Again. This time she didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just asked if I'd be willing to come over for dinner that Saturday. Just me. Just them. I hesitated. "I won't pressure you," she said quickly. "I promise. We just want to talk." So I went. The house felt different without him there. Quieter. Like something essential had been removed, leaving behind a hollow echo. His father looked older than I remembered, lines etched deeper around his eyes. His mother brought out coffee and asked if I was eating, sleeping, taking care of myself. The questions parents ask when they know something has gone wrong and they don't know how to fix it. "We want you to know," she said finally, "that whatever you decide, we respect it." I nodded, sensing there was more. He told us everything his father added. About the coworker, about what he asked of you, about how wrong it was. They didn't minimize it. They didn't defend him. That mattered more than I expected. "He's devastated," his mother said quietly, "but we also understand that devastation doesn't undo harm." I felt my throat tighten. "He ended things with her immediately," she continued. "Told her he was engaged. Asked her never to contact him again. He started therapy. Not to win you back, but because he needs to understand why he did this." "That's good," I said honestly. "I hope it helps him." "Do you think," his father asked gently, "that you could ever trust him again?" The question hung between us, heavy and sincere. "I don't know," I said after a long pause. "Trust isn't something you can just decide to give back. It's earned, over time. And right now, I don't know if I have the energy to wait and see if he earns it." They nodded. No disappointment, no argument. When I left that night, his mother hugged me tightly at the door. "You've been nothing but good to him," she whispered. "And whether you stay or go, you deserve someone who never forgets that." On the drive home, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. Even if he changed, even if he grew, even if he never repeated this mistake, it wouldn't erase the fact that when it mattered most, he hesitated. And I was no longer willing to build a future on hesitation. 6 weeks passed. Not quickly, not cleanly. They passed the way grief always does, unevenly. Some days slid by without much weight. Others felt impossibly heavy, like every memory had decided to surface at once, just to remind me what I'd lost, or what I'd almost lost myself to. Sometime during the 3rd week, I finally said the words out loud. "We need to officially end the engagement." I didn't say them in person. I didn't say them on the phone. I sent them in a message that took me an hour to type and 10 seconds to send. Clear, calm, no accusations, no hope hidden between the lines. He responded almost immediately. "I understand." That was it. No bargaining, no begging, and in a strange way, that hurt more than if he'd fought me on it. A few days later, I asked for the ring back. Not because I wanted to sell it, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I couldn't move forward while that symbol something meant to represent certainty was still in his possession. We met briefly to exchange it. Neutral ground, a quiet coffee shop neither of us had any memories tied to. He looked different, not just sad, smaller, like someone who finally understood the cost of indecision. He slid the ring across the table without argument. "I'm really sorry," he said softly. "I know that doesn't fix anything." "No," I replied, "but it's honest, and that matters." That was the last time we spoke face to face. A week later, I got an email from him. Not a plea, not a justification, not a carefully worded attempt to reopen the door. Just an apology. He took responsibility fully, named what he'd done without softening it, acknowledged that he'd treated me unfairly, said he understood why I couldn't forgive him, wished me happiness, even if it didn't include him. It was the most honest communication we'd had in months. I didn't respond. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. I moved the rest of my things out of his apartment 2 weeks later. No ceremony, no tears, just boxes and quiet goodbyes to a life that had almost been permanent. The ring, the one with the engraving, sat in my dresser drawer. He said no, it wasn't entirely accurate. I was the one who ended things. But the meaning still fit. He said no to choosing me without hesitation, no to shutting the door when it mattered, no to being fully present in the commitment he'd asked for. His family still checks in on me. His sister texts every few days. His mother sent me a small care package last week, homemade cookies, and a note that simply said she was thinking of me. It's strange maintaining ties to a life you've stepped away from, but they were never the problem. As for me, I'm okay. Some days are harder than others. Some days, I miss what we had or what I believed we had. Other days, I feel relief so sharp it almost surprises me. Relief that the truth came out before vows, before shared mortgages, before children who would have learned what uncertainty looks like up close. Better to end an engagement than to survive a marriage built on doubt. The ring is still in my drawer. I tell people it's being resized. That's a lie. I just can't bring myself to wear any ring again, not yet. Maybe someday with someone else. Someone who doesn't need space from being chosen. Someone proud to say it out loud everywhere. Until then, I'm rebuilding, learning, paying attention to the red flags I once explained away. The table went still that night because everyone finally saw what I'd been seeing for weeks. The missing ring wasn't about jewelry. It was about truth. And sometimes the truth has to be visible before anyone is willing to acknowledge it. It's been long enough now that people have stopped asking how I'm doing in that careful, lowered voice way they use when they think someone might still be fragile. I'm not fragile anymore. I'm changed. The first few weeks after the engagement officially ended, everything felt unfamiliar. I'd been part of a we for so long that even small decisions, what to eat for dinner, what to watch at night, how to spend a Saturday, felt oddly heavy. Not because I missed him constantly, but because I was relearning how to listen only to myself. There were moments when loneliness crept in. Quiet evenings, empty weekends, times when I instinctively reached for my phone to share something small and funny, then remembered there was no one on the other end anymore. But there was also something else. Peace. Not immediately, not all at once, but slowly, steadily it settled in. I realized I wasn't bracing myself anymore. I wasn't scanning conversations for signs of distance. I wasn't wondering if I was asking for too much just by expecting to be chosen fully. I didn't have to wonder anymore. His email stayed unanswered. Not out of spite, just because I didn't owe him closure beyond the honesty we'd already exchanged. Sometimes silence is the cleanest ending. His family still exists in my life in small, unexpected ways. A text from his sister asking how work is going. A photo from his mother of a recipe she thought I'd like. There's no awkwardness in it, just a quiet understanding that what happened wasn't something to be erased or rewritten. They saw it. They saw the truth the same night I finally said it out loud. I think about that dinner sometimes. Not with anger, but with clarity. How strange it is that a single missing object, a simple ring, could bring everything into focus. How quickly a room can go still when a lie runs out of places to hide. The ring with the engraving still sits in my dresser drawer. He said no. At first those words hurt, then they grounded me. Because he did say no. Not with his mouth, but with his choices. With hesitation. With silence when honesty was required. With a request that should never exist between two people who are truly ready to marry each other. And I said yes. Yes to myself, yes to clarity, yes to walking away before the cost became irreversible. Some days I miss the version of him I thought I was going to marry. Other days I feel deeply grateful that I met the version of him I actually would have married before it was too late. I'm not wearing a ring now. Maybe someday I will again, with someone who never asks me to make myself smaller so they can feel less conflicted. Someone who doesn't need space from commitment because commitment feels like relief, not pressure. Until then, I'm here, rebuilding, paying attention, trusting what I see instead of what I hope is true. The table went still that night because everyone finally saw what I'd already been living with. The missing ring wasn't a threat, it wasn't a stunt, it wasn't revenge. It was honesty. And sometimes honesty is the bravest thing you can put on the table.